And welcome everybody to our Brian's Beginner Basics class. So I was just saying before we turned the camera on here that we have kind of covered the left side of the instrument and we've covered the middle of the instrument. And today we're going to be talking about the right side of your instrument. And I am on the Easy 10 today. So this of course applies to all the Easy series instruments, but it also applies to any instrument really that Lowrey or SD has made because they all operate basically the same way. So when you're looking over on the right side of your instrument, no matter what you have, it looks like we have some easy owners, maybe some LC, and maybe even some larger instrument owners here. So we got a good mix. When you look over at the right side of your instrument, you're going to see a bunch of buttons that have different melody sounds. And of course, the melody is what you're going to be playing with your right hand, and that's the part of the song that you would sing. So it gets a little bit confusing. So some of the terms on the Lowrey and SD instruments are very similar, even though they do completely different things. Like you might know, if I move my camera over back this way, one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago was the fact that on the Lowrey instruments, you have different performer modes. Okay, so if you can see me pointing over here, on many instruments you have a full band, pianist, and guitarist. Now what that means, hopefully you remember this, let's say I put on a country style, okay, so I touch country for my music style and I have full band selected. What that means is that when I touch my chord, I'm going to hear a full band music style. In other words, I'm going to hear the drums, the bass, in this case probably fiddles, honky-tonk piano, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so there's my country band, right? Full band. If I were to touch pianist, now I just hear a piano player for my music style. All right, not full band, right? Just the piano player. If I were to touch guitarist, then I hear just the guitarist. Right? So we already covered that, so I'm not going to go into that too much in depth today, but just so you know, that's what full band, pianist, and guitarist mean over on the left side. The reason I mention that is because, as you can probably see on your screen, we have buttons that look very similar because it says pianos, guitars. So, what's the difference? I think you guys probably know this, so I'll just dive right in here, but in case there's anybody watching that doesn't know, the big difference is that over here, your pianist and guitarist music style have to do with what backing band you're playing with. In other words, when you touch a chord, what do you hear? Do you hear a full band, a piano player, or a guitar player? Okay. Over on the right side, that has to do with your melody sound. Okay. So, in other words, when I select, let's say, pianos as opposed to pianist, pianos is going to be what plays on my melody sound. So if I touch pianos, right now I'm on honky-tonk piano because I was just on the country style, right? And for anybody that doesn't know, a honky-tonk piano really just means an out-of-tune piano. That's really what honky-tonk means, right? Usually in a saloon, probably had some liquor spilled on it or something and hadn't been tuned in 50 years. That's what the honky-tonk sound is. It's just out of tune. Okay? But what you can do on any instrument that you're able to scroll with, okay? So if you have an easy instrument or an EY instrument, what you can do is select different pianos. That's why it's plural. It says pianos instead of piano. Because when I start scrolling, I have an electric piano. I have another electric piano. Right? Different tone. I have a toy piano. Right, like a little kid's piano. I have the octave piano, I have society piano, I have harpsichord. Right, so these are all different types of pianos. And of course the grand piano. Okay, and then I'm back to honky tonk. So on the Easy 10, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different pianos. And I got those by touching pianos and then scrolling. Right? Everything on the Lowrey, it's always touch and scroll, touch and scroll. So as I go to the next one over here, guitars, it's the same thing, right? So on guitars right now I'm on the pedal steel, right? Right? And but as I scroll, now I get the electric Strat guitar. I don't know if we have anybody on today who plays guitar, but that's just a different type of electric guitar. Hear the difference in the tone there? Here's your pedal steel. And here's that Strat. Different tone, right? I have rock guitar. So if anybody's into that kind of harder rock and roll, you can use something like that. I have the acoustic guitar, very nice, pretty sound. All right, I have the country guitar, another great one for, Hank Williams or something. Got the jazz guitar. I really like this one. So anyway, I'm not going to demonstrate every single sound for you, but here's Hawaiian guitar. All right, so you got something for every kind of music that you could want to play. And as you go over, strings, woodwinds, you might have that button, woodwinds, brass. Okay, so woodwinds is going to be stuff like your saxophones, and I don't know if you can see, but there's actually a picture of a saxophone there. So in case you don't know what woodwinds are, saxophones, but that also includes stuff like clarinets, flutes, I believe, are also in there, oboe, that kind of stuff, all in that woodwinds button. Brass, you might have that button. Brass is going to be like trumpets, flugelhorns, trombones. What else do they have in here? French horn, that's another really pretty one. And then you have a button that says more. Now, more is always an important button no matter what part of the instrument you might find it on. More is basically all of the other stuff, all of the other sounds, melody sounds in this case, that they weren't able to fit under the umbrella of pianos or guitars or strings. Or maybe it might be a piano or a guitar, but they just didn't have enough room to put it on that button. So they added another one that says more. So you touch more, and now I got all these different sounds. Harmonica, kazoo, mandolin, marimbas. Marimbas is fun, right? Different organs, Baroque organs, ensembles, pan flute, that's a really pretty one. Piccolo, those are good for marches. Scat singers, steel drums, if you're playing any kind of island tunes, anything like that. The whistler, all sorts of stuff. So when you get to more, just know that that's more melody sounds, that they just didn't have enough room to put tons more buttons on here. They just kind of lumped everything else into that more category. Okay, so you have pianos, guitars, strings, and then some instruments will stop there and then go right to more. Others will have those woodwinds and brass, and then more, okay? And if you have an instrument that has red buttons over here, or some of them have red and blue buttons, the difference in that is that they, in those cases, didn't necessarily categorize all the stuff into groups like they do here. In other words, they group all your pianos here, your guitars, your strings. Some of them will just say, like, grand piano, electric piano, jazz guitar, and each one will have an individual button. So if you have an instrument that looks like that, you might actually have a button for a lot of those individual sounds. Okay, and then instead of more, you might have a button that says genius. So if you have a button instead of more that says genius, that's kind of the same thing. So genius is when you would touch and scroll to find all those additional sounds. Okay, everybody with me so far? Give me a nod. Let me know you've had enough coffee. Okay, good. All right, so here's where it gets a little tricky. Now, if you have an instrument that has numbers in the middle, okay, maybe you can see me pointing here kind of on the left side of your screen there, but on your instrument, it's right in the center. So this is the Easy 10, but those numbers in the middle are on many of the instruments. What happens, now I want you to focus over here, and hopefully you can see this. I tried to arrange it so the light wasn't so bright on our panel, but we got a lot of bright lights in here, so hopefully you can see this. When I scroll through my buttons, watch the lights change over here, okay? Can you see how it lights up different stuff every time I touch a different button? So what that's doing is, remember we talked about style setups last week. And if you missed last week's lesson, make sure you check it out on YouTube. Now, I'll never miss a chance to plug our YouTube channel. You guys know I love getting you to head over there. So if you go to youtube.com/Fletcher Music Centers, you can see all of our lessons that we've uploaded, not only from our store, but from the other stores as well. But we did talk about our style setups and talked about how those give you a new melody sound, or if you have a 2-keyboard instrument, one for the upper, one for the lower, okay? And that's what it does. It's lighting up all these different buttons. So if I touch number 3, let's say, on this one it gives me calliope, and then a different kind of organ, like a rock organ, down here. Oop, can't really see my lower keyboard, but if I touch number 4, I get honky-tonk piano and fiddle. So each number I touch is giving me a different sound for the upper, different sound for the lower. And it's doing that by automatically picking out different sounds right here. So let's say, for example, you don't have numbered buttons in the middle like this, like the Easy 10 does. Well, how do you change your sounds? Because everybody can change their melody sounds. That's an important thing to know. What you have to do is you have to know how to select different melody sounds over here. And it's a little bit more challenging than having the setups in the middle because, again, those setups do it automatically, but it's not impossible. And what you have to do is figure out, well, what sounds do I actually want to use? So do I want to use a piano sound? If I do, what kind of piano sound do I want to use? Well, it depends on what style of music I'm playing. If it's a country song, maybe that honky-tonk piano. If it's a love ballad, maybe one of those nice electric pianos. It's a big band or a standards type of song, maybe the big grand piano. But that's up to you, right? You can always pick your own sounds. So you can go through and say, okay, I might want to use this piano, so you touch and scroll. Might want to use this guitar, and you touch and scroll there. Might want to use this kind of string instrument. So you get the picture. You get kind of touch and scroll for each one. But here's where the tricky part comes in. What if you have a 2-keyboard instrument and you want to program one sound for the upper keyboard and a separate sound for the lower keyboard? So I'll ask you guys first. Does anybody know how to do this? If you have like an Easy 4 or an Easy 10 or any 2-keyboard instrument, do you guys know how to program one sound for the upper and another sound for the lower? Feel free to unmute or start waving your hand if you know. There's Sarge waving. Let's see if you can. Can you unmute there, Sarge?
Okay.
There you go.
You would hold piano down and then hold the guitar together. That'll blink. You go down, click on lower.
That's pretty close. Pretty close. That's like an A- answer. That's really good. I'm going to summarize it a little bit differently. So in case you couldn't hear what Sarge was saying, he said that you essentially touch one and hold it, and you touch the other, and then you touch lower. So that's almost completely right. What you want to make sure is that if you have a 2-keyboard instrument, there's going to be a button. I'm pointing to it here on the Easy 10, and it says orchestral to the right of your split point. Okay, it says orchestral to right split. And so what does that mean? Well, orchestral are your orchestral sounds up here. Now it says it here, but it's easy to miss if you don't look. But all the stuff I was just talking about, pianos, guitars, strings, woodwinds, brass, more, those are all your orchestral melody sounds. Okay, all these buttons here. So if you don't have this button selected, which is a black button right here that says orchestral to right split, if you don't have that on, that means that you can't put any melody sounds on the lower keyboard. Okay? Now it comes on automatically most of the time. You can see when I select different setups, it's automatically on because, like I said, these setups, they pick one automatically for the upper and the lower keyboard. However, if you're programming your own stuff, let's say I'll just put on Latin, okay? If I happen to turn that off, that orchestral to the right of the split, then everything here, even way up here, becomes a chord. Right? See, there's no melody. It's all chords. Now, if I have that turned on, the orchestral to the right of the split, now Now I have a melody sound. So if you're going to program your own sounds and you want one for the upper, one for the lower, you want to make sure that that orchestral to the right of the split is turned on. And again, all that means is that your lower keyboard is split, where the left side is going to be your chords for the left hand, right side is going to be the melody sound for your orchestral. And as Sarge said, what you want to do is figure out, well, what two sounds do I want to use? So just for the sake of simplicity, let's say I wanted to do piano and strings, okay? So I'm going to select piano, and remember, you can touch and scroll. So I'm going to go to the grand piano. There it is. And then I'm going to select what strings do I want. I'm going to put on strings ensemble 2. Okay, now this could be any two sounds. We'll do another couple examples. So then you have to figure out, what sound do I want for the upper keyboard? What sound do I want for the lower keyboard? So let's pretend I want piano on the upper, strings on the lower. What I would do, as Sarge said, is I would touch pianos and hold it. So I'm holding down that button right now, and then while I'm holding it, I would touch strings, because that was my second sound. And I'm going to try to zoom in real close here so you can see. Okay, now pianos is lit up solid and strings is flashing. So hopefully you can see that. Okay. What that means is that piano is going to go to the upper keyboard, and strings, because it's flashing, is going to the lower keyboard. Okay. So let's try another example. Let's say I wanted jazz guitar on the upper keyboard and I wanted saxophone on the lower keyboard. Okay, I'd come over here, go to guitars, touch and scroll. So I'd go until I hit, there's jazz, okay. Then I'd go to saxophone, which is under the woodwinds. And let's say I wanted the alto saxophone. Okay, now if I want guitar on the upper keyboard, saxophone on the lower, I would touch and hold guitar, because that's the one I want first. That's the one on the upper. Touch and hold, and then I would touch woodwinds. And if I zoom you in here, oops, it's not showing up here. Let's try that again. There you go. Hopefully you can see there. Guitar is lit up solid, and woodwinds is flashing. Okay, so what that means, just like the piano and strings, is that now I have my jazz guitar and then saxophone down here. Okay, now if I wanted it the other way, let's say I wanted the saxophone on the upper, guitar on the lower, I just do it the opposite way. I touch and hold woodwinds first, right? And then touch guitars. So now it's the opposite. Woodwinds is lit up solid, the guitars is blinking there, and now I have saxophone and then guitar. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that so far? I know this tends to be confusing, so please do ask questions if it's not clear. Okay, I don't see anybody waving at me, so I'm going to keep going here. But just remember, if you want to set it up on your own, you hold whatever sound you want. You know, first you have to find whatever sounds you want, right? And then you touch and hold the one that you want for the upper keyboard. And then while you're holding, you touch the second one for the lower keyboard. And the lower keyboard sound will be blinking. So here's a question. Sarge got a good answer last time. Let's see if we can stump anybody here. Let's say let's go back to piano and strings, okay? So I touch and hold piano, that's lit up solid, and then I select strings, which is flashing, okay? Now, if I were to turn off this button, right, that we talked about, the orchestral to the right of the split, what would happen if I turn that button off? Does anybody know? So I have piano lit up solid, strings is blinking, but I turned off orchestral to the right of the split. Does anybody know what might happen there? It's not like Jeopardy. You don't lose points if you get a wrong answer.
Would you have chords on the bottom?
It's chords.
Say again, Fred?
You would have all chords on the bottom?
Yep, that is actually, that's not the answer I was thinking of. But that is true. You would have all chords on the bottom. So all chords down here, But what happens to my piano and strings? Because they're still turned on, right?
They play together?
Yes, they play together. They go together both on the upper keyboard. So that's what we would call a layered sound. Okay, just like you're creating layers of like a cake or whatever. Both of those sounds would now go to the upper keyboard. So now I have piano and strings up here. And that works with anything. Let's go back to our guitar and saxophone example. If this is off, the orchestral to the right of the split, if that's off, now I have both up here. Okay, it works with any of them. Okay. Now here's a real tricky one. There's another button here that says orchestral on off. Okay, this is not the orchestral to the right of the split. That's for your lower keyboard. If I happen to turn this button off, orchestral on off right here, now what happens?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I have no melody sound at all. Because remember, the melody sounds come from your orchestral buttons over here. So if that orchestral is off, doesn't matter that guitar and woodwinds are lit up, because that's kind of like the master off switch. So if that button happens to be off, now it won't happen that way by itself, because like I said, when you're using your setups, it's going to program stuff for you. But if you happen to touch that button off, okay, you're not going to get any melody sound on the upper keyboard or the lower keyboard for that example, or for that matter, because you're going to have all chords down here and then you won't have anything on the upper. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So let me add one more thing in here as far as our orchestral stuff goes. So you can only have 2 of these selected at a time. In other words, let me zoom us in a little bit closer here again. Okay, so when I'm on, like, let's say piano and strings again, okay, I can't then also select woodwinds, right? I can't go piano, strings, and then woodwinds, right? See, it goes to just one or the other. So I can't select 3 sounds on here. Same goes for more, even though more has a lot more sounds in terms of the number of sounds that are in there compared with the other ones. I can still only select 2, right? One's going to be blinking, one's not going to be. No matter what you do, you can only select a maximum of 2 sounds. Now, you can choose to put one on the upper and one on the lower, or you can choose to layer them, like we did with the piano and the strings, or the guitar and the saxophone, by turning off that orchestral to the right of the split. Right, you can layer those sounds. Okay, but there is an exception. If you look over here, there's a button that says organs. Now, for whatever reason, who knows? I've said to you guys before, I don't really know too much about the insides, the engineering of the instruments. I just know what they can do. For whatever reason, organs run on a separate sound engine. Or that's probably the wrong term. If there's any engineers watching, they're probably cringing right now. But for whatever reason, organs are considered separate from the rest of your orchestral sounds. Okay, so let's take an example here. Let's say I was going to put on country guitar, and then I was going to put on pan flute. Okay, that just happens to be what came up. Okay, so I have guitar, pan flute. So right now, I'm going to turn off the harmony. Right now, because I don't have the orchestral to the right split lit up, right now I'm going to hear both of those sounds on the upper keyboard. Right? Everybody with me? So I have country guitar, pan flute, and because I don't have the right split orchestral turned on, both of those sounds are going to come here on the upper. Kind of an interesting sound there, right? Country guitar and pan flute. Okay, now when I turn on organ, I can select different sounds, right? Jazz organ, solo organ, so mellow plus strings, rich organ plus strings, pipe organ, full organ. Let's use pipe organ because that'll be a noticeable sound. Okay, here's just my guitar and pan flute. But organs is on a separate thing. So if I touch organs, I have now layered 3 sounds, right? 3 total. Now, I would bet all the money in my savings account that when you woke up this morning, you never thought you were going to hear a pipe organ, a country guitar, and a pan flute playing together. And you may never want to again. but my point being that organ button here is on a separate thing from the rest of these. So that still applies if you want to use the right split on the lower. So if I turn this on, now whatever's flashing here, whatever's blinking, in this case that's going to be the pan flute, is going to still go to the lower keyboard, but then I still have these two remaining sounds. I still have the pipe organ and the country guitar. Right? So you have a lot of different options. Now, even though it says organs, there's also strings in there. There's many different organ sounds. There's actually vocal ensemble is on there too. So, you know, again, the setups program a lot of this stuff for you. So if you have these numbered buttons in the middle, you don't necessarily need to fiddle around with too much of this stuff over here, okay? And, you know, this is why I left this section for the last kind of, not the last of this class, but, you know, the last kind of part of the instrument panel that I'm going to go over, because it is the part that probably people would use the least. But I think it's important to know how to use it, because you might want to program some of your own sounds. You might want to get into, you know, something that maybe is a little bit more obscure. You know, maybe you want to play, you know, kazoo with pan flute and pipe organ, you know, maybe like goofy sounds. Maybe you want to program something that's not in there. So that's how you do it. You want to touch and scroll to whatever sound you want. Whatever sound's going to go to the upper keyboard, you hit that first and hold it. And then you select your second sound, and that's whatever's blinking there is going to be the one that goes to the lower keyboard, provided you've got that to the right split orchestral button turned on. Okay? Does anybody have any questions on that?
I do.
All right, let's hear it, Fred.
Well, no, it's I get these things done, but there's always a practical and a theory to stuff. And I was practically getting it done, not really knowing how to do it. So today's lesson's been great. I now have a theory to go with my practical. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you, Fred. Really, the only way to get this stuff kind of solidified, as far as remembering how to do it, is just to try. You know, because probably what will happen is you think, oh, yeah, sure, that makes sense. And then you go sit down at your instrument in an hour or tomorrow or next week, and you think, what was he talking about? How do I do this again? And, you know, you can always review it on our YouTube channel, right? But the only way to really get, you know, familiar with it and get to the point, like if you ever see us sit down and we play a concert on an Easy 4 or an Easy 10 or Sterling, it doesn't matter. You might see us just go and just touch a bunch of buttons. Well, the only reason we can do that is because we've done it so many times. We can just sit down and just program the sounds that we want. And that's not something that's reserved for professional players. You guys can do that too. And in fact, many of our students do that, right? They sit down and they say, okay, I'm going to use a violin here, and then I want a nice clarinet for the lower keyboard. So violin, clarinet. Right? So this is not something that's beyond anybody. You just have to know how to do it. And again, most of the instruments that are out there work the same way. You know, I didn't talk too much about the buttons, about the instruments that have like the red and the blue buttons over here. So if that's something that you have, remember, it really works pretty much the same way. You just have a slightly different way of getting it to the upper and the lower keyboard. But the touch and hold and then touching the secondary sound, that works the exact same way. All right. And if you're thinking, I don't really want to program my custom sounds, well, everybody has style setup or a rhythm preset, so it's going to, no matter what style you pick, it's going to turn on with something that sounds good no matter what, right? That's the good news. If you have the numbered buttons in the middle for your style setups, then you have even more of those options that are custom programmed for you. If you don't, then you might really want to consider doing what we talked about today, going over here and exploring your different melody sounds and seeing if you can program something else. Okay. I didn't mention this, but if you have a one keyboard instrument, obviously you're not going to have orchestral to the lower right split because there's just one keyboard, so you don't have the lower keyboard. So anytime you do the touch and hold thing, it automatically layers the sounds for you, right? It's like automatically programming it to just the one keyboard. And it still works the same way with the organ, so you can still layer up to 3 different sounds, like on an Easy 1, Easy 2, or Easy 3, you can layer, guitar, strings, and organ, right? But only 2 of the orchestral plus the 1 organ sound. Okay. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is, depending on what instrument you have, it's going to be in a different location, but because it's on the right side of this Easy 10 here, I wanted to mention it. I'm going to just do a quick reset of the instrument just to show you how it comes on here. But you're going to have a section that says lower if you have a 2-keyboard instrument. So if you have an Easy 4 or an Easy 10, I know we have a couple folks on here who have those instruments, you're going to have a section that's small. In this case, it's just these 2 buttons here. And one says ensemble, one says more. And what that's talking about is your lower left sounds. Okay, so I'm going to be playing my chords over here. Hopefully you can see both the chord and these buttons here. Okay, so I'm just going to turn on my Easy button. Right now, the lower left section just has more turned on, right? Hopefully you can see that button there. So what sound is it? Well, it says it's piano, meaning when I touch a chord, I'm going to hear piano. So just like anything else, I can touch and scroll. Let's try pizzicato strings. All right, so I can change that sound. There's saxophone section. There's scat singers. The shooby doobies, right? I can make steel drums if I want. So I can scroll to any of the sounds that are in more. Brass, choir. Oh, that choir is pretty. And you have different choir sounds. That's the choir ah. That's the choir ooh. Big band ensemble. All sorts of different stuff. But that lower only affects your lower left chords, whereas what we were talking about before is your upper and lower melody. Okay, so you have more options. Remember, anytime you see more, that means you have additional sounds. In this case, we're talking about the lower left. And then under ensemble is what Joni would describe as kind of the smooth sounds. If you put on more, at first we had piano, and that's kind of like, I think she says it's like the plunky sounds. Isn't that what she says? I think she called them the plunky sounds or something like that. Right, meaning it's not smooth. It sounds like that. Whereas if I put on ensemble are the smooth sounds. So something like strings or organ or vocals. So if I put on strings, hear how that's smooth as opposed to the kind of plunky? Or if I put on, there's vocals. Vocals and strings. Organ, there's kind of a pretty organ sound. So you can choose either ensemble or more or both. So let's say I wanted to just like you can custom program your melody, you can custom program your chords. So let's say I wanted, I don't know, let's pick something fun here. Let's say I wanted steel drums and vocals, right? Let's say I was playing kind of like a Caribbean type tune, something with kind of an island vibe, and I wanted the steel drums and vocals. So that's kind of cool because it's combining that kind of plunky steel drums in this case with the kind of smooth vocal sound. But that works the same way. Now this one, it's not a touch and hold type thing because you're not having to select between two different parts. There's only one part. It's in this case we're just talking about the lower left keyboard. Okay, so I can select either one or both. And just like the melody sounds, if you're thinking, I don't want to have to mess around with that. I don't have to pick my own lower keyboard sounds. I just want to turn it on and play. Well, watch these lights here. Okay, if you can see these two, these are my lower sounds, lower left. Well, they change depending on what I'm playing. See that? I'm selecting all different things. Sometimes one comes up, sometimes both, sometimes neither, right? If I'm playing like a pianist or a guitarist, sometimes neither one comes up. They change with these too. So you never have to mess around with that stuff. And again, that's kind of why I saved it for the last part of this little series, because this is kind of if you want to go above and beyond, you want to program something that you're thinking, well, I had this really specific sound in mind. I wanted to make it exactly like what I thought of. Then you can kind of go in and custom program the stuff like that. But it comes on automatically and sounding great no matter what you pick. Alrighty. What do you guys think? Any questions on that, on the lower left? Alrighty, I don't see anybody with any questions here. Well, I'm glad. It looks like Rebecca and Nilda and Gertrude joined us today. I don't know if you guys I don't think you've been on in the last classes, but I'm glad to see some new but familiar faces here, even though I can't really see your faces technically. But it is nice to see our little class growing here a little bit. So I think what I'll do, if nobody has any questions, I'll leave you guys with a little music here. I was kind of in a Broadway mood. I played this the other day. Were you guys able to get on our concert that we did with the 7 people, 7 stores, 7 organs? Wasn't that fun?
Yes.
That was really cool. We
Yeah.
you know, I say it all the time. I feel like every week I probably sound like a broken record, but the technology with Zoom and all that, just to be able to, do 7 instruments,
Different
7
places.
different
That's
stores,
good.
7 locations. I mean, multiple states. It's so cool that we can.
Awesome.
It was good.
Oh, thank you, Nelda. Thank you.
Oh, right. You hurt me.
I did.
Oh!
There she
It
is.
was great.
All right. Well, I'm going to mute
Question.
everybody, and I'm going to play a little music for you, and you'll see me. I'm just going to use the setups. I know today we talked about custom programming the stuff, but I'm just going to use the setups in the middle and just use the stuff that the instrument has provided for me here. So I'm going to do a little Broadway medley. And
Brian, one question.
yes, Nilda.
Okay, so when you're picking everything from your right side or your lower and upper, you don't do anything with your left side music styles? You don't, that because automatically when you turn it on, it goes to full band.
Right. So
So
you
you
can, any of that stuff that I talked about today, you can do with full band, pianist, guitarist, or if you're just using the easy button and no style.
Okay, but what I'm trying to ask you is, so when you play with your, set it up on your right-hand side, you don't have to touch anything out of your left settings?
No.
Okay. Well,
And in
that's
fact, I always recommend going left to right on the instrument. So if you're gonna select a style, do that first and then set up this stuff. Because if I were to set up whatever I want over here and then pick a style, it's gonna likely change. So if you're going to do something custom over here, pick your style first. We'll always work left to right. So like if I was going to do country, I could touch country, my intro, and then come over here and then pick my sounds.
Okay, so now I'm done with that, and I want to go to another sound. I just shut the organ off where it says stop.
Yeah, you could do
Before.
stop. Yep, and then I would do the same thing, left to right. So let's say I just played country and I want to play Latin. I touch Latin and then come over and pick whatever sounds.
Okay, but what I'm saying, when you're going to switch songs, you should set it shut it off, or can you just jump from one to the other?
Well, you never need to shut it off in terms of like powering it off, but you would want to touch either stop
Right.
or your ending. Either
Okay,
one.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Alrighty,
And I'm
so
so
let's,
happy it's on my organ.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to end with some music here for us. Just do a little Broadway medley. Here we go. I switched to country. Good thing this isn't live. Oh wait, it is. right. Hopefully that got the blood flowing a little bit.
Yay.
Well, it's always fun hanging with you guys virtually here on Zoom. Of course, we always miss the in-person interactions, but the second best thing is still keeping our program going and being able to see y'all on online here. And I do appreciate you joining. And remember, if you've missed anything, always check out our YouTube channel, because even if you think, well, I come to Brian's class, I might do Joni's class, I do the weekly class with Robert, there's actually even more stuff, believe it or not, because we have content that comes from our Arizona stores. We have stuff that our store in the Villages has been uploading. Dawn and Randy up there have been doing. So there's tons and tons of stuff. If you think that we're not providing enough content, man, you got to get over to our YouTube channel, because there's always new stuff. And I'm telling you, Robert works tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure that there's just stuff uploaded. I mean, on a daily basis, pretty much, there's new stuff. So make sure you check that out. This week we have, let's see, we got our variety. Well, we got Joni's class tomorrow. So if you come to that, that's same time, 11 o'clock. And we have our variety class on Wednesday, variety class on Thursday. And then we have our Zoom musical featuring Sean Maloney this week from Arizona. So you might have seen him play on our big program with John Riley for the birthday celebration this past Friday. So Sean's going to have his own full-length show. He'll be featured on Friday. So we got another great week of stuff coming up. And having said all that, if you guys have any questions, make sure you get in touch with us. Remember, we're doing one-on-one appointments here in the store if you feel like coming in, or if you're far away or you don't feel like venturing out to the store. We do all the stuff on Zoom. So make sure you contact us if you have any questions, anything we can help you out with, okay?
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
All right,
Brian.
great to see everybody.
Brian,
Yes, Sarge.
I'll use it for my lesson for the day, okay? I'll use this for my lesson for the day.
There you go. All right, you got it.
I've learned something from the keyboard.
Good to hear.
It'll
I look
work.
forward to seeing you guys all soon. Sarge, I hope you're on the mend and back to 100% soon.
Okay, thank you, buddy.
We'll see y'all. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.